Tonight, state of emergency. Towns under threat in a developing fire crisis. Defence Force helicopters evacuating families. Special live coverage from the danger zones. Malakuta plunged into darkness as hellish conditions return for a second time. First pictures from the town of Buchan. Homes destroyed in a deadly blaze. Defence Force reserves help in how strangers are rallying to help families left in limbo. And hundreds back on dry land after a Navy rescue.
Live from our Melbourne headquarters, this is 7 News with Mike Amor.
Good evening. Major fires are bearing down on towns and new threats unfolding as we go to air tonight. The situation right now is grim. There are 14 emergency warnings in place for communities, and it's feared homes have been lost in the historic towns of Omeo, Swifts Creek and Ensay in East Gippsland. Many others are at risk, and an airlift is underway tonight to rescue stranded residents. The unprecedented crisis has been met with unprecedented action. Defence Force reservists called in for the first time. We have live coverage coming up from across Victoria. But first, let's go to Blake Johnson outside Bright. And Blake, what's the biggest threat there at the moment?
Mike, there are major concerns tonight for the town of Omeo. These pictures are just into the newsroom. Black Hawk helicopters and Chinooks are involved in a fairly dramatic rescue. We understand women and children are being flown out of the town, and there are reports that there are plans to defend Omeo's hospital if the fire does breach the town's defences. That blaze is headed towards Omeo, Dinner Plain, Kabungra and Anglers Rest. And the incredible challenge that emergency services face as we go to where is there are fires across a huge chunk of our state.
It's the crisis that won't let up. More than 50 fires rage across the state. East Gippsland is still a danger zone. The threat now spreading into the Alpine region and across the Dividing Range. Thousands of hectares, around 1/5 of the state, is in the firing line. Evacuation warnings were issued throughout the day with distressing regularity. Sadly, that green on the Emergency Control Centre screen isn't rain, it's smoke. These are the first pictures out of Buchan, where at least one man's been killed. The devastation is starkly evident. Houses, farm buildings, livelihoods destroyed. What's left of Malakuta is under attack for a second time. Orange outside town turning day. The scale of the emergency is evident now as the convention centre in the heart of Melbourne is turned into an evacuation centre. And now the realisation this is a battle that needs a national response. Until now, the Defence Force would only be called in at the request of the state. Not anymore.
Without being asked, we'll be turning up.
The Prime Minister mobilising the Army and the Navy and calling up 3,000 reservists.
The scale of the fires is stretching resources on the ground, and there are clearly communities that need additional help.
15,000 people fled Bright. Warnings 2 days ago, one of the town's busiest weeks of the year, but it's almost empty. Almost.
I could have left town, but my family and myself all felt as though we should stay and wanted to stay.
The pub's open, but it is quiet.
We're here for the community and supporting anyone that requires any assistance.
Hopper Tanker 11, and that's with me, with Justin, James and Harry.
Fire trucks from Melbourne's western and northern suburbs are a long way from home. They'll protect Bright so CFA crews can leave town and fight the fire front.
That's one of the issues with Bright, is that it does tend to have its own sort of weather patterns, and the unpredictability of that is why we're here.
Just out of town, an onion crop is 10 days from being harvested, its seeds sent to Japan. But an impending ember attack could wipe it out. It's worth more than $100,000.
It's hard to kill us farmers off. We've been around here for a while, and we'll be here for a long time yet.
Tonight we're coming to you live from a farm 7 kilometres west of Bright. The owner of the farm is a little concerned. He's put his cows in a pen just for safety precautions, and you can see why. Just on the other side of that ridge, about 7 kilometres, there is a fire burning and it is heading towards the town. There is ash falling on the farm as we speak. Would you believe it? Those hills behind us a month ago had snow on them, such as the rapid change in the weather here. But there is some good news. Today's weather was 43, the top. Tomorrow, just 23, and Mike, for the first time in a while, rain is forecast.
Thank goodness for that, Johnson. The Corryong fire in the far north of the state is worsening as we go to air. Georgia Comensoli is nearby in Tallangatta. Georgia, record heat and strong winds have hampered attempts to contain this blaze.
Mike, the fire around Cudgewar into Corryong has now crossed the border into the Green Valley area in the south of New South Wales. It is so big, it reaches over 120,000 hectares all the way down to Mount Kosciuszko. Today we saw fire crews from the air trying to contain that blaze with fire retardant. We must remember that there are still hundreds of residents who are now isolated in their communities around this fire zone. And let me tell you, the heat around the border northeast is unbearable. Right now it's 45 degrees in Tallangatta. Across the border in Albury, they had their hottest day on record, temperatures reaching 46 degrees. We're here at the staging ground tonight in Tallangatta where we're waiting for a shift change for those fire crews. But because conditions are changing so rapidly in the past half an hour to an hour, we expect that change won't happen for some time. Many crews will be working well into the night. The wind has definitely picked up in the last hour and everybody here is waiting to see what will come with it. Mike?
Georgia, thank you. 2 fires in central Victoria have triggered emergency warnings, evacuations and road closures. Nick McCallum joins us live from the State Control Centre. Nick, are the emergency teams on top of these fires?
Well, Mike, they think they are at the moment. At around 3:30 this afternoon in the Bendigo suburb of Huntly, residents were warned to evacuate straight away because of a fast-moving grass fire. Now, 30 ground units and 2 water-bombing helicopters were used to attack the flames after a Facebook call-out. Volunteers rallied to a local animal shelter and they rescued horses, chickens, dogs and 60 cats. That fire is now watch and act, no longer an emergency. Around 130 kilometres away in Euroa, 2 smaller fires merged together and formed one big fire which threatened at one stage several houses in the Euroa township. Fierce winds blew the flames towards the Hume Freeway and at one stage all lanes heading north and south were closed. That traffic jam was made even worse by an accident in the area as well. Now, fire-bombing aircraft have doused the flames in that area, but still the southbound lanes, Mike, remain closed.
A busy day where you are. Nick McCallum, thank you. Mallacoota has faced another hellish day with families still trapped in the coastal town. Cassie Zervos is there. Cassie, the fires plunged them into darkness in the middle of the day.
Mike, holidaymakers and residents were terrified on Tuesday. It was just as scary today. At 2:30 this afternoon, the sky turned red, then black, as though someone turned a light switch off. The Navy has just briefed families who have been unable to leave because they have children, young children and toddlers, but that will now change. There are plans in place to evacuate them immediately. Authorities have also said there's no immediate fire threat to Mallacoota, despite today's eerie conditions. A hellish red returns to a coastal town already on edge. The hot sky lasted just minutes before Mallacoota was again plunged into darkness.
Trying to keep safe and thinking of our kids at home.
It's not a nice thing, but anyway, we'll get through it.
It's 2:30 in the afternoon, but it looks more like midnight. Our news crew has been here for 4 days, and this is by far the worst conditions we've seen. You can't see, it's hard to breathe, and there's dangerous embers falling from the sky. The only visible light was from a fire truck. It's deja vu for Mallacoota.
We're very worried. We've actually moved down near the water.
It's still a bit scary, isn't it?
Dave McFarlane's home burnt down on Tuesday. Today, he did all he could to protect the caravan he's staying in from ember attacks.
I drowned my sorrows last night and that helped a bit.
A few beers?
Yeah, more than a few.
The Navy evacuated 1,000 people yesterday. Hundreds remain trapped with no way out.
Obviously, I've got a pretty young child, so I'm not sure whether he can actually even go on the boat. You know, we're probably not as important as elderly and sick.
If you make it to Eden, you can't get any fuel, and the fire's burning that way anyway.
A Perth family spent years planning this road trip. Son Baden turned 8 today. It's a birthday he'll never forget.
How's it been for you guys? Terrifying.
Yeah, it was pretty scary. Getting out would be nice.
The Kirschbaums are on a holiday of a lifetime from Germany.
Airplanes couldn't go last night, given visibility and then certain things they need to do on the runway.
We still want her to be on that flight.
Yep, that's fine.
Tourists and residents continue to register for flights out of Malakuta. None of them can take off until the smoke clears.
It's important. Keep it on your nose. I kind of figure what we went through the other day, I don't think it could be any worse.
It's close, but stranded residents are prepared for the worst.
Into the kayak, if the fire comes through here, these trees catch on fire in the water.
Cassie Zervos, 7 News.
The isolated town of Nawanawa, just north of Lake's entrance, has been evacuated in the face of an out-of-control blaze. Paul Dowsley is there. Paul, it's a worrying time.
Yeah, Mike, and for most of the 300 or so residents here, they will not know the state of the town because it's pretty much evacuated. Here we are on a Saturday night and the Nawanawa pub is empty. On the other side of the road, the holiday park, the caravan park, has also been abandoned. And that is because there is a fire blazing that is out of control up behind me in the Buchan Valley, which continues to be a threat, although it seems that it may well have dodged this town for the second time in just 4 days. On Monday, a fire came perilously close to town, and it seems that today it is also a wind change has protected this town. A lot of the residents here who have stayed, and there's only a handful of them who are still here in town, the message to me today has been one of anger and frustration that roads in the forests right through Gippsland have been, to them, mismanaged and been left to become what is now a perilous danger. So tonight, even though it has calmed down a lot here, the wind is still gusting. It's just 17 degrees. Mike, an uneasy night ahead.
I bet. Thanks, Paul. Let's bring in Sunrise correspondent David Woywood at Bruthen in East Gippsland. David, are residents there out of danger?
No, not quite yet, Mike. Today's weather has thrown absolutely everything at the residents here in Bruthen and across East Gippsland. We've had this extreme heat, these wildly unpredictable winds, and now this. Have a look, a looming thunder and dust storm just up there on the horizon. But look, the good news is no fire, and that has been a major relief to residents here in this town. The CFA crews, they continue to monitor the situation. Those emergency evacuation orders, they remain in place this evening. Make no doubt about it, this is still a town at the centre of a surrounding firestorm. Central Bruthen, foothills of the high country alert, but warnings of horrific conditions this morning tempered by a calm start.
It's just a bit of a waiting game.
Then, just after this, so it's really kicking on now. It's been incredibly still all morning. In fact, many of the residents we've spoken to around here, they were actually saying it wasn't going to happen today. But look, that is an incredibly strong wind. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens now. Winds buffeted the town in from Stover, an already smouldering fire ground, prompting a flurry of last-minute preparations. Well, these conditions today have been anything but predictable. This weather has thrown everything at the people of Gippsland today. We've had heat, we've had winds, and now this, a looming lightning storm. Just north in Swifts Creek, hell on earth. It's stretching resources across the region with this astonishing admission from the Bruthen fire captain. We are physically unable with remaining assets to conduct perimeter defence of the township. All firefighting appliances and personnel will be withdrawn to the centre of Bruthen, meaning residents like Mick Kennedy could be on their own if and when the fire hits.
Just sort of going everywhere at the moment, so you don't know where it's going to come from.
So it's just a matter of sort of keeping your eye on it all now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. You just keep watching it.
Just up the road, the Gippsland dairy farmer whose prime ministerial challenge prompted plenty of debate.
Step up, get behind us, don't let any more people die.
Today called for a return to civility.
Don't be aggressive to him. If that happens, he's not going to be able to do his job.
And with missions like this, there's plenty of work to do. David Woywood, 7 News.
Wangaratta has become a safe haven in this crisis. Jodie Lee is tracking developments there, and it's become a refuge for hundreds fleeing the firestorm.
Yeah, Mike, so far Wangaratta has been saved by these devastating fires, but a number of surrounding areas like the Alpine and the High Country haven't. As a result, Wangaratta has become a kind of relief point for hundreds of people, with the Australian Defence Force and hundreds of extra police here to receive those with nowhere else to go. A large rural centre, now a refuge. Wangaratta housing hundreds of people, some fleeing holidays, others fleeing homes to safety as Victoria burns. For India Fletcher-Jackson and her family, their dogs and horse were the main reason they left their property at Abbey Yard.
You know, you can rebuild houses, but you can't rebuild lives, so it's better just to go.
Susan Scarcella and her husband did the same, piling their German Shepherds and Maltese Terriers into the car, fleeing Markwood for Wangaratta's Kennel Club.
Because that's our primary concern, is the dogs. So, yeah, as long as they're happy.
Manpreet Singh didn't need to leave, but he felt a need to help. He and a group from Craigieburn's Sikh temple hit the Hume with $10,000 worth of food to cater for those displaced.
We're just here to help and provide food to people who are living in a relief centre.
We're very lucky that we're pretty safe around here, but we're here and open for business to accept as many people as we possibly can.
Home comforts for so many who don't know if they'll have a home to return to. In Wangaratta, Jodie Lee, 7 News.
The conditions driving these fires are some of the worst we've seen. Jane Bunn joins us now. Jane, what can we expect from here?
Well, Micah, fires are at their most dangerous when hot and dry winds are engulfed by a cool change. That is exactly what's been happening out there in the fire zones. The extreme heat ahead of a front and trough let gusty northerly winds push the temperature up to 46 at Wodonga and Rutherglen. At Orbost, it went from 41 to 21 when the wind change hit and brought in the cooler air. Portland went down to 15. But it's a slow change in the north, only just reaching Wodonga now. These wind changes are so dangerous because the northerly winds have been pushing fires southwards. And as soon as the wind changes direction, the fire explodes. This puts a whole new area in the danger zone, and why Enze and Swifts Creek near O were suddenly under threat this afternoon. The other major concern here is that these fires can produce their own weather, sending smoke and ash up to form storm clouds. Traditional thunderstorms have a burst of rain, but these beasts are dry, so it's a violent rush of wind instead, and lightning strikes potentially starting new fires. Melbourne's temperature dropped to the teens this afternoon, and building cloud is ahead of rain on the way. Now, this rain could help the fire zones. I'll have more after sport. Bye.
Bring on the rain. Thanks, Jane. This fire crisis has touched Melbourne's heart, with strangers pulling together to help the families and communities that have been left in limbo. The city's already donated hundreds of pallets of food and water for the Army to deliver to fire zones.
An act of compassion, hundreds lining up to donate food for fire victims.
I just can't imagine the devastation that people are through. People need help.
15 food hampers are being sent to East Gippsland today, each with enough food to feed a family of 4 for 5 days. The Army arrived this morning to load and deliver 50 pallets of water across the state.
Some of it's going back and going to be airlifted into East Sale, and then there'll be a convoy across the road to Bairnsdale.
100 food bank volunteers are working around the clock. Many donating say they feel helpless.
My parents actually live up in the south coast of New South Wales, so they're actually, trapped there at the moment. It's devastating to watch. Can't imagine what it's like for them to actually be going through it.
Clothing and food donations like this will make a huge difference to communities impacted by these devastating fires, but some smaller charities are overloaded. The best way to help right now is to make a financial donation to ensure those communities get exactly what they need.
We can buy specific food items that are being requested. We need to fuel those trucks.
The Sun Theatre in Yarraville inundated with donations.
People were just ready to do whatever they could.
A huge community effort too in Devon Meadows.
Once the roads have opened up, we can drive straight into the areas directly affected.
In these situations, we all need to come together. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Details on where to donate are on our Facebook page. Louisa Cheatley, 7 News.